Hey everybody! In today's lesson, I want to talk about one of the greatest bebop contrafacts of all time, Donna Lee. First, we're going to learn the melody, and then we're going to take it apart and look at some lines that can help our ears as well as progress our language when learning bebop. Let's check it out right now. Okay, so first, let's learn the melody. Playing this melody can help you with a lot of things, such as eighth note feel and phrasing. Make sure to be able to sing this melody and then work on memorizing it, as you'll get the most out of learning this if you really have it under your fingers and in your brain and you're not reading it. I've included a couple corrected notes as well that Parker plays on his recording that aren't on the real book lead sheet. Also, just a quick reminder that my new album Each Step is available for download on Bandcamp and physical pre-order off my website and off Origin Records website. Okay, so now that we have the melody under our fingers, let's take apart the DNA of this. Parker uses a couple key concepts in this contrafact, and those are arpeggios, sometimes with extensions thrown in, chromaticism, the major bebop scale, and line closers. Let's break down each one of these concepts with some examples. Okay, so first off, let's focus on arpeggios. Parker uses them all over this tune in various different ways. One common way that Parker shows us how to use arpeggios is to use the arpeggio going up and then use a line closer to finish the line, most likely going down. This is a must-know 5-1 bebop line. So our phrase starts on the third of our dominant chord and then walks up the arpeggio. So in this case, we start on A since our chord is F7. Then we have our line closer. These are just common ways to close or finish a line using jazz language. This one starts on the flat 9 of our dominant chord and then walks down to the third of our 1 chord. Our arpeggio doesn't really have to smoothly lead to the line closer either, like it does in this line. You can just jump to the start of the line closer. Parker does this here. Here's another great example of using line closers and arpeggios. So this phrase uses an arpeggio with some extensions thrown in, a sound that Wes Montgomery and Grant Green like to use a lot. In this case, the arpeggio uses the 9th and the 11th. Then our line closer sounds like this. The last arpeggio example takes the formula and it flips it. As you can hear, the line closer that Parker usually uses to end our phrases is now used to start the phrase, and then the arpeggio finishes the phrase or extends it. This line, to me, is a great example of tonic dominant language, meaning a dominant chord that doesn't resolve to the 1 chord, it just kind of stays in the sound of the dominant. This is useful when you want to extend dominant lines and then eventually resolve them. Or just play over static dominant sounds, like the B section of a rhythm changes. Okay, let's move on to our next concept, chromaticism. So Parker uses a lot of chromaticism in this melody. Now whenever he uses it, he's always thinking about where the line is going. Here's an example. In this case, he uses chromatic enclosures to enclose chord tones of our arpeggio and extensions. In this case, we're enclosing the root and the flat 5 of our dominant chord. We could think about this line in two parts. One that encloses chord tones of our arpeggio, and one that encloses extensions of our arpeggio. So if we look at the first part, we can continue this pattern up or down our arpeggio as it starts on the 3rd, encloses the root, and then jumps down to the flat 7. Here's what this pattern would sound like moving it through the arpeggio. We can also do the same thing to the second part of this line that we're taking from Donna Lee. In the second part, we use chromatic enclosures to enclose our chord tone, that being the flat 5. We can move that same pattern and enclose all the other altered chord tones, the flat 5, sharp 5, flat 9, and sharp 9. Now all you have to do is combine different combinations of all these patterns together and then finish it off with a line closer from Donna Lee, and boom, you have some really great sounding lines. For more information about chromatic enclosures, make sure to check out the videos, which you'll see linked in the description of this video. The last concept that we are going to cover for this lesson is the major bebop scale. Parker uses this right out of the gate with his melody. All this is basically our major scale, but with one added note, that being the sharp 5 scale degree. This is useful because you can start on any note of our major arpeggio and you'll land on the same note that you started with a measure later. So if you start on the 3rd and walk up the scale or down the scale, then you'll end on the 3rd in the next measure. The one thing though is make sure that when you're using this scale, you don't count the 7th as part of our chord tone. You need to move it to the 6th. So our arpeggio in this case would be the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and now the 6th instead of the 7th. This is great for playing just over major chords or leading into other lines. Here's an example. Now this is just a simple 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression. I started on C because I know that I will land on C. So if you look, our first measure is A flat major 7, and that lasts for one measure. So we start on C, then we end on C in the next measure, and the next measure is C minor 7. And C minor 7 is our 3, which leads to our 6, and then which leads to our 2, 5, and 1, etc. So if you know some short 2/5 language that starts on the root, you could just plug and chug right there. Then I finished this phrase out over the final 2/5/1, pulling from the melody of Donna Lee. For more information on the major bebop scale, also make sure to check the description, which will have the link for the video. So the last thing I want to do is play a short etude over the first half of Donna Lee. I'm going to try to use as many of the concepts that we covered in today's lesson and try to put them together in a nice coherent way. Make sure to keep an eye out for when I'm using certain licks from the melody and when I'm using licks that we made during this lesson. Thank you guys so much for watching this video about Donna Lee. Another thing I would highly recommend is for you to take this melody apart even further. Go through each line and find the licks that you like. Take those licks, move them to all 12 keys. There's so much information we can get out of this melody. It's really just like a transcription that everybody knows. If you like what you're seeing, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more content in the future. Thanks everyone for watching, and remember to always keep swinging.